Go.
Okay, hey everyone. So, have y'all heard the quote, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind? Well, this was a quote delivered by astronaut Neil Armstrong. Today, I'm going to be informing you guys about the first ever successful US moon landing, which occurred on July 20th, 1969. Per Gizmodo's website, published on January 11th, 2024, what if I told you that out of 150 missions to the moon, only 6 were successful with a crewed landing? Well, first we're going to be talking about what the U.S. moon landing was. Second, we're going to be talking about what the U.S. moon landing was trying to achieve. And third, the impacts that it had. So to kick it off, it all started with the Apollo program. The Apollo program was a program founded under NASA, which I found out from a Smithsonian magazine published, saying that the Apollo program was active from years 1961 to 1972. During their run, they launched a total of 14 missions, with 6 being successful, and their first one was on July 20th, which was made possible with the Apollo 11 spacecraft. So, from another NASA website published on April 15, 2019, we find out that aboard the Apollo 11 were 3 astronauts, including Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong, and Edwin Aldrin, or Buzz. Michael Collins was the command module pilot of the ship, and aside him was uh, Edwin, the lunar module pilot of the ship, and commanding the two was Neil Armstrong, the carrying commander. Um, Neil Armstrong would also become the most notable astronaut of all time, as he would be the first ever person to step foot on the moon, but he would sadly pass away in 2012 at the age of 82. 2 years later, in 2014, a flight research center was renamed in his memorial, and I would also like to add rest in peace to Michael Collins, who passed away in 2021. So, from another NASA website published on April 15, 2019, we talk about the Apollo 11 journey. The Apollo 11 launched from Cape Kennedy on July 16, 1969, while 450 million people watched nationwide. From launch to actually touching surface of the moon, it took a total of 109 hours, since they launched on July 16th and landed on July 20th. While they were on the moon, they spent a total of 21 hours there before returning home safely. So, now that we've discussed the task at hand, let's talk about what they were trying to accomplish. From a Space Center website published on September 2nd, 2019, their biggest supporter was President John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy delivered the We Chose to Go to the Moon speech, which became a nationwide phenomenon as it inspired the citizens of the U.S. that maybe space exploration was possible. In support, the U.S. government also gave the Apollo program $25 million. With all this money, we find out from a NASA website published on July 15th, 2019, that NASA was able to create new inventions for the launch to be possible. The 3 I would like to talk about are digital flight controls, which was basically a motherboard that helped a computer send commands to the spacecraft itself. Second was food safety, which improved as new ways were needed for food to be stored for the astronauts. And last was fluid shock absorbers, which safely removed fuel and electrical connectors from the spacecraft during launch. Aside from this, the moon landing also won the space race. The space race was a rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and the US ultimately won with the invention of the Apollo 11. From a Royal Museum's Greenwich website published, we find out that they were also able to achieve other missions, with 12 men total being able to walk on the moon, and this was only made possible in 3 years before the program ended in 1972. Well, now since we know what the US moon landing was, let's talk about the impacts it had. From a NASA website published on February 17th, 2023, we find out that the Apollo program continued with Apollos 11, 12, 14, 16, and 17, which were all successful. Apollo 17 being the last one before 1972. From another NASA website, Copyright 2024, we find out that there were also impacts with advancements in technology. I would like to talk about the 3 things I discussed earlier, with the first thing being digital flight controls. We now commonly use that every day as common as something in cruise control in our cars. Food safety created new ways of food preservation and conservation, and fluid shock absorbers, becoming the most important one, is now used as building and bridge reinforcements for earthquakes. The Apollo program also came up with integrated circuits and embedded computing, which, fun fact, paved the way for the invention of the internet. So without this happening, we would have never had the internet, and that's something we use every day. From a YouTube video published by WKYC channel on August 28th, 2022, they were also able to prove human capability. From designing the spacecraft to ensuring that everyone made it home safely, it was all around a human effort, and it proved that humans are capable to great extents, meaning that all the Apollo's crew members' hard work paid off. So that is it. Today I informed you about the first successful US moon landing, which occurred on July 20th, 1969. First, we talked about what the US moon landing was. Second, we talked about what they were trying to achieve. And last, we talked about the impacts it had. From an AP newspaper published on July 13th, 2019, we all know the famous quote, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."